When we started planning our second Camino Francés, we knew we wanted more comfort and privacy at the end of the day, but figuring out private accommodations wasn't as straightforward as we expected. In this video, we'll show you exactly how we handled our private accommodations over 46 days, how we booked them, our favorite stays, and what the whole Camino actually cost us, all the way from Seattle to Santiago. We've walked the Camino Francés twice, once in 38 days with some rest days, and again in 46 days with no rest days, both times starting in early September and prioritizing private rooms. We tracked every euro on this trip, and I'll walk through our real per-day costs plus the total for our 46-day Camino near the end of this video, so you can budget your own walk with real numbers. For us, private rooms made sense. We value having quiet time to ourselves, and on a longer 46-day itinerary, getting good sleep really mattered. Because albergues charge per person, a simple private room for two was often only slightly more than 2 dorm beds, and private rooms meant we didn't need to pack things like sleeping bag liners or earplugs. Now, if you're wondering whether private rooms are realistic on your Camino, here's how we decided what to book, when to book, and what it actually cost. Let's start with one of the most stressful Camino questions. Will we actually find a bed each night if we don't book ahead? We would have loved to have been more flexible and decide day by day, but for us, private rooms with private bathrooms were a priority, and we were walking during a busy time of year, from September into mid-October. That combination made booking ahead the right choice for us. If you're walking during the peak months, May through September, and you're comfortable with dorm rooms or shared bathrooms, you can often just book the first few days and then plan as you go. But if you prefer or require private rooms, it's usually better to book the entire Camino ahead, especially in smaller towns where there may only be a handful of rooms available. Along the way, we met several pilgrims who were booking day by day and sometimes struggled to find private rooms. It really comes down to flexibility and comfort. If not having a place booked would cause too much stress, booking ahead is the better option. If you're comfortable adjusting plans, booking a few days at a time gives you more freedom. The big exception is day 1 over the Pyrenees. If you're walking the Napoleon route and planning to split Saint-Jean to Roncesvalles into 2 days and don't book Orisson or Borda early, you may be walking the whole way in one go whether you plan to or not. The Valcarlos route over the Pyrenees has more accommodations, and it's the route we took on our last Camino. It's beautiful as well, but doesn't have those iconic Pyrenees views. We started booking in late March for a September 2025 start, so almost 6 months before our Camino, and it still took us nearly 3 weeks of on and off planning to get everything reserved. For most private rooms during busy months, I'd aim to start booking 4 to 6 months ahead if you want lots of choice, especially in smaller towns. Day 1 in Orisson is the big exception again. We booked Orisson in December, about 9 months before our start date, and by spring many of the most popular dates were already full. If splitting the Pyrenees is important to you, that's the one place I'd book as soon as reservations open for your year. As it turns out, we didn't end up staying at Orisson. For that story, check out our Valcarlos route video. What kinds of accommodations are available on the Camino? Spain actually has legal categories for different types of accommodations, and knowing these names makes it much easier to search and to understand what you're getting for your money. Albergues are pilgrim hostels, usually dorms with bunk beds and shared bathrooms. Municipal albergues are basic and cheap. Private albergues may offer nicer facilities and sometimes private rooms. A casa rural is a small rural guest house, often family-run, with private rooms and a quieter atmosphere. Great value if you want comfort without hotel prices. This was our favorite category of accommodation on the Camino. Hotel or hotel rural. Standard hotel with private rooms. Hotel rurals often mean a countryside property, sometimes in a historic building. Tourist apartments. These are short-term rental apartments, ideal if you want a kitchen or a rest day. Hostel or pension. These are budget hotels or guest houses, usually simple private rooms, sometimes with shared bathrooms. Posadas. Traditional inns, often historic and atmospheric. On the Camino, you'll see all of these, which lets you mix traditional albergues with more private stays depending on your budget and preferences. Booking 46 days for a single trip was a daunting task. Here's a step-by-step overview of how we planned and booked 46 nights without driving ourselves nuts. First, we planned our ideal schedule. We plotted our desired overnight stops with 3 different Camino apps. We used Gronze, Wise Pilgrim, and Camino Ninja to choose stages and see what options were right on the route, because walking an extra kilometer off the Camino at the end of the day is just no fun. And by picking places listed in these apps, we knew we'd be staying on or very near the Camino alongside other pilgrims. Then we shortlisted places on the map. Gronze was great at this. Gronze shows the Camino route and accommodations together so we could see at a glance the distance between towns and the available accommodations, allowing us to adjust if the town we had originally chosen wasn't available. Then it was time to start booking. We booked most of our rooms on Booking.com. It was easiest for managing multiple reservations, but not all accommodations are on Booking, and some small albergues and casas rurales only accept email or WhatsApp, so we booked those directly. If a place asks for payment details by WhatsApp or email, double-check you're using the contact info from an official website or app listing, not from a random search result. We used TripIt to store confirmations so we could quickly check that every day had a bed waiting for us. TripIt will also let you add airline, train, and bus reservations so you can have all of your Camino details in one place. We also had everything on a Google Sheet, which, if you know me, is not too surprising. This helped us stay organized while planning. We have a link to that spreadsheet in the description. One of the highlights of walking the Camino was experiencing so many different types of accommodations. We had some really memorable stays along the way, so we wanted to share a few of our favorites. Our favorite albergue was El Encanto in Villarez de Orbigo. From the moment we arrived, we felt like we were staying with family rather than a pilgrim hostel. Marta and her brother had restored this beautiful farmhouse. She arranged dinner, served a communal breakfast, and she even did our laundry for a small fee. She made sure we had everything we needed. It was such a great Camino experience. Our most luxurious stay was the Parador in Leon.
Nah, no self-respecting pilgrim in the Camino would ever stay in a Parador. The decadence of it is absolutely appalling.
We used points to stay in a 12th century former pilgrim hospital. Rooms start at around €250, but if you want a Parador experience at a lower price, the Parador in Santo Domingo de la Calzada can be closer to €100. Our favorite Casa Rural was Hotel Rural Villa Avis in Santa Catalina de Somoza. It's a beautifully restored stone farmhouse run by owners who walked the Camino themselves and then decided to create a quiet, welcoming place for other pilgrims. Our room was cozy and comfortable with an owl theme, and the candlelit breakfast the next morning made this stay feel especially personal and memorable. Our most unique stay was the Hotel Castillo in Albergue Renero, which is actually a truck stop hotel right on the Camino. It doesn't sound glamorous, but it turned out to be fun and a very practical stop. The pilgrim menu drew plenty of locals, so dinner had a lively atmosphere, and because it caters to truckers, the bar was open early with coffee at 6 a.m. for an easy start. The rooms were simple but comfortable with air conditioning, and we definitely weren't the only pilgrims who had figured out that this was a pretty good option. Let's talk about what our Camino actually cost. We tracked every expense from leaving Seattle to arriving in Santiago and flying back to Seattle, and the total came to $11,015.35 for 2 people on a 46-day Camino Francés with private rooms every night. To make that more useful, our average spending while walking, accommodations, food, coffee, laundry, and small extras was about $169 per day for 2 people. We carried our own packs and did not use a bag transfer, which would have added to that daily cost. Here's roughly how that broke down. Accommodations. We spent $4,269.87 total, with costs ranging between $59 and $258 per night. Accommodations varied widely depending on where we stayed, everything from simple albergues to 5-star hotels. Over our Camino, we stayed mostly in casas rurales and hotels, with a handful of nights in hostels, apartments, and albergues, and just a couple of stays in posadas. Food and drinks included restaurant meals, snacks, coffee, water, and the occasional glass of wine at the end of the day. We spent $3,241.37 total, or about $35 a day per person. Most days we had the Pilgrim menu, which is a 3-course meal typically with a starter like super salad, a main course, usually a protein with fries, a dessert, and often wine included. We'd usually have that as a late lunch or early dinner when we arrived in town, and then just have a small snack later in the evening. Extras. This was mostly laundry, blister care, sunscreen, bug spray, and activities like museum or cathedral entrance fees. We spent $272.35 over 46 days of walking. It's important to note that since this was our second time on the Camino Francés, we did not do as many activities as on our first Camino. The big wild card for total Camino costs is everything around your Camino: flights, time in Spain before and after, and any splurge nights like the Paradors. The daily walking cost on the Camino can be quite reasonable, but your final total will heavily depend on where you're flying from and how much extra travel you add on. Overall, we were really happy with our mix of private rooms and more traditional pilgrim stays, and we hope this gives you a clearer idea of what to expect and what it might cost. If you're planning your own Camino and have questions about budgeting or private rooms, leave them in the comments. We read every one and can use your questions for future videos. Until then, buen Camino.